Welcome to Gen Z Hoops, the Gen Z basketball, coaching, and sports business show. On this podcast, you'll learn from professional players, coaches, and executives from all over the world and see the court in a brand new way. And now, joining you courtside, your Gen Z host, John Hartofilis.
Coach Phil, how are you?
Good, man. Good. Can't complain. How about you?
Doing great. Really excited to have you on the show. I know we've been trying to plan this out for a while, so it's really exciting to have you on and get to do this. Obviously, a great background with the jersey in the back. It looks really cool, and really looking forward to jumping in here. I mean, just to kind of get us started, I'm curious maybe where this kind of basketball journey all started for you. I know obviously you had a great pro playing career that we're going to dive into. Where did that love for it first come into play?
Well, growing up in Prince George's County, Maryland, we had a lot of talented kids growing up. I remember playing against Jared Jack in Boys and Girls Club, and then playing with Mike Sweetney in high school, and then playing against Delonte West, Eddie Basden, and the list goes on and on about DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And I learned a lot about the value of competition. I mean, from there, my high school career, I only lost 8 or 9 games, throughout my whole 4-year career. Made it to 3 state championships and won 1. So I was accustomed to winning. And then that's where my basketball journey kind of, my competitive spirit and fire kind of, ignited, from those experiences in high school. But I always knew I wanted to play professional basketball. But I knew at an early age, I see you're young and your experience. I see you got your European players back there, jerseys and stuff like that. So, but I was aware of the European game back in, the early 90s. And I knew that if I didn't play in the NBA that, I was going to go play overseas. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but that was just a goal of mine.
I mean, that's awesome. And of course, yeah, the jersey behind me, of course, Porzingis being a native New Yorker, and then Giannis being Greek-American, 2 guys I obviously look up to, and obviously really appreciate the overseas game. Obviously going to Greece and playing there and seeing the game there was huge for me. But thinking about just obviously basketball being huge somewhere and people not really knowing about it, a lot can be said about the DMV area, right? The basketball's kind of really exploding there, and there's some really good guys coming out of there. I've had a lot of guests on the show that come on and they always, like you just did, rep the DMV area, and that's the first thing they mention talking about their upbringing is saying, well, where I came from, right, there's a lot of good talent. And like you said, I mean, that Boys and Girls Club sounded like there were some elite guys walking through the door. Right. Can you talk a little about the DMV area and just maybe like how it's kind of really transformed as a basketball hotspot?
Nothing has changed. It's just become more commercialized now. Back then you were either with when I was coming up, you were either a Nike's guy or Adidas guy. With Jabo Kenner, I was a Nike team, and now with DC Assault being the Adidas team, who we all know about them, what they bring to the table as far from the AU game. But this area has, grown tremendously on the amount of talent that comes out of here. I mean, I've been away for so long that it's hard for me to keep up with how many teams we have here. Like I said, it used to be, the PG Jaguars, the Maryland Stallions, the DC Blue Devils, like I said, Jabo Kenner and the Nike team, and DC Assault. But now it's just so many teams, it's hard to keep up with. And it just shows the AAU game has grown. But the good thing is that these kids are getting the opportunity to play. And whereas then back then it was hard to get a roster spot, on these teams. So the good thing is that these kids get the opportunity to play, but they missing out on earning the right or earning that spot, because the AAU game is just, kids are a little spoiled these days. I miss the old ways, but it's just like you say, it comes with the territory. But we're going in a good direction.
Oh, of course, love to hear that. And thinking about, obviously, where you came from, obviously, like you said, going 3 state championships, I'd imagine a lot of college coaches would come into your games watching and seeing you play. What made you pick Drexel? I'm curious. And I'd imagine so many coaches were coming to these state championship games and there was so much exposure. I'm curious when you explain kind of the college decision process for a player that is playing in such high-level games and getting seen by so many coaches.
Well, my experience, Drexel, this is about 2005, 2001. So it's a long time ago, guys, 20 years ago. Well, I knew I wanted to play my my freshman year. That went into a lot of it. So I had some A-10 schools, a couple looks at some Big East, but, I could have went to those that was my level. My thing was I'm coming from a winning situation. I'm coming from used to being able to have fun on the court the way I wanted to play. And I wanted to make sure, I kind of had that same momentum going into my freshman year. So my high school teammate, Lamar Butler, who ended up going to the Final Four with George Mason, we actually went to George Mason's recruitment visit the same day. But I knew I didn't want to go there, but I was just going just to support my teammate. And then I went to James Madison, and I committed to this team verbally committed to this team on the spot. And I love the college atmosphere. I'm a city guy, so seeing the woods and stuff like that, the air was just different out there, in that part of Virginia. And I love the campus life. So I thought I was going to James Madison. And then I went to Drexel. And here I am back into the city where I have St. Joe's, Villanova, Penn, all these, LaSalle, all these schools right here. It sort of reminds me of DC basketball, how we have the Jabo Kenner League and they have the Sunny Hill League out there in Temple University. So it was like my home away from home. Then I had my guy, Sean Brooks, that played at Central High School in Prince George's County, Maryland. He was there at Drexel too. And so I get there and I just fell in love with, I saw myself being comfortable here. I saw myself being not only having fun on the court, but off the court as well. Delonte West ended up going to St. Joseph. That's right there. And David Hawkins, and Kevin Lyde, they're DC guys. They went to Temple. So I felt that was the best place for me to go. And it all worked out for me. We had an amazing 4 years at Drexel.
Oh, definitely. It's incredible thing about your story and obviously how you ended up there. And because a lot of other players will have maybe a similar experience and thinking, okay, well, the area they're coming from and who's going there with them. And obviously I would imagine the coaching staff played a big role. And I've read you talk about Coach Bruiser, right? And how pivotal role he maybe played, maybe the emphasis he placed on certain parts of the game or how he really motivated you to get the best out of you, and which would eventually lead into your pro career. Can you talk a little about that? Maybe the emphasis he placed maybe on defense or on a certain part of the game that really got you going?
I mean, the whole coaching staff at Drexel, it was an important moment in my college career that kind of hit home and still hits home for me today. It was I came in the Drexel my freshman year and I all rookie team and stuff like that, had success. And then, I let that go to my head a little bit. So I'm hanging with, different crowds, doing things that I'm thinking that's cool, but I'm putting myself deeper in the hole. And I ended up being on academic probation because of my actions, because of my decision going into the situation. So Bruiser, Coach Jeff Arnold, Chuck Martin, all those guys brought me to the office and said, hey, Phil, you got an opportunity to not only play after basketball, but to play after college, but have a long career. You can really do it. And a lot of these guys on this team don't have this opportunity, so don't blow it. Outside of X's and O's and teaching me how to come off ball screens and reading the game and stuff like that, that was something that kind of hit home for me that I will always remember about the coaching staff at Drexel, because they really cared about me on the court, but how was I conducting myself off the court, which bring it full circle. As a professional, it's the same thing. You have to be able to conduct yourself in a certain way in order to last a certain amount of time as a professional in any career path you choose. So those are the things that I remember most.
Oh, definitely. It's incredible to think about the impact the coach can have in your life right outside of the game and talking about how they kind of set you on that right path. And obviously they were right. And you didn't blow it because you had a very successful pro career that ended just recently, right? And this was so many years ago. We're talking about your Drexel career. Obviously you had a super long pro playing career. Obviously, so going overseas, everyone, like you mentioned at the beginning, something that maybe people don't know much about. You had mentioned how you knew about it in the 90s. Can you still I would imagine still there were some surprises definitely when you got there. If you could maybe talk about your first few practices with a new team, different language, maybe what was kind of the most shocking thing once you got there?
I was fortunate enough to go to Holland, and Holland is kind of like an easy transition country to you introducing yourself to Europe. A lot of the people there, country is slow pace, unless you go to Amsterdam or Rotterdam or something like that. But it's a very, countryside. People there are very friendly, diverse, speak English. Some people speak English. So, you could go there and kind of like ease your way into the culture of Europe. And a lot of people aren't that fortunate. I can't imagine going all the way over to Russia as my first year, but not in Moscow and somewhere else in the middle of nowhere in this freezing cold. So I was fortunate, and my experience I felt that my college routine was a lot harder than my pro routine. I didn't have to worry about schoolwork anymore. So the transition for me was pretty easy. It wasn't the highest level of basketball, but like I said, it was all about the transition, going from a mid-major, getting my foot in the door as being a pro. I had to make sure I was able to confident mentally believe that I can do it. It's one thing to say you're a professional, but my whole goal was to say I'm a professional. I'm not just a pro, I'm a professional at this. It took a long time for me to get to where I came, and the first year was a very important role in everything that I've accomplished.
I can imagine it. And you've spoken a lot about maybe how different the game is played over there, and how there's the style is so different. If you can kind of touch on that in terms of, so obviously going to so many different countries, maybe did you see differences country to country, or maybe was it more of just, oh, this is European basketball?
I think it was more, this is European basketball, and I was being stubborn in my ways of what I was taught from coaches coming from college or high school and all the above. The game didn't necessarily change. It was really me adapting and buying into whatever the coach's philosophy was. My whole 15, 14-year career, the plays didn't change as much. It's still, high pick and roll. It's still, the same, still backdoor cuts. It's still the same exit, floppy and horn set. So nothing has really changed. It's really player. And for example, it was me buying into what the coach, wanted from me. And then once that happened, and I put the team put the team before anything I was trying to do, my career kind of took a turn for the better.
That's perfect. And one thing, part of your European stuff I definitely want to touch on is when you were in Greece. I'm curious, when you were there, if you could maybe talk about the fans. Obviously, I know that stuff gets a little crazy by playing with Bauk and all that stuff. I can see you smiling because it's everyone I talk to, right, that's played over there says the same thing. And I've obviously witnessed it when I went to Panathinaikos Goss game. I saw the flares and everything. Is there anything maybe from there that really stuck out to you with one game where you're like, I cannot believe these fans did this, or something like that?
I always, of course, once you get introduced to European basketball, you always dream of being in front of those, that Panathinaikos, Olympiacos type atmosphere, crowds. And I remember my first game against Olympiacos. I was fortunate enough to play for one of the bigger teams historically in Greece, so other teams outside of Aris, Pauk, Ike, and the big two, the green and red, they don't really get to experience this. So I was fortunate enough to play with Pauk, and I remember the first game playing against Olympiacos, and it's a derby over there, for those teams playing against each other. Italy was great, but those fans, in PAOK and also in Athens, we ended up winning the game against my first game against Olympiacos. I had 27 points, hit some big shots. So I'm feeding off the energy of the crowd, and it was no looking back. And it was like my third or fourth game in Greece, and I was 35, and people thought I was old. People thought I couldn't play no more. So, that kind of like gave me the confidence to say, all right, I still got it. Let me go back out here and still prove that I can play this game at a high level.
My next question would be, how did you get out of that arena alive? But I'm sure, but now that you did, I'm sure, right? Whatever, there was some way you got out of there, which is great. I'm curious. So, I mean, when talking about maybe being an older player, maybe learning how to keep your career going. Obviously, I saw that during the lockout season, which I thought was super interesting, is that you played with Tony Parker for a little bit when he came over and played with you guys. Can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe what you learned, or maybe what was like guarding him in practice every day as the other point guard?
The one thing I learned, this was the worst experience I had, but the best learning experience. The lockout was not for sure until the season had already started in Europe. So I was going into the situation thinking, all right, this is going to be my show. We playing in the Euro League, Euro Challenge and stuff like that. So when Tony got there, of course, I had to take a back seat, but I still wanted to compete. We competed every day, practice, and that's where I learned so much about the game, how you approach the game, and I learned a lot from that aspect. But me and the coach and the organization didn't have the same vision of where I fit in amongst the roster, and looking back into the situation, I handled the situation totally different totally wrong because, these young guys that I had on my team are now playing EuroLeague, Barcelona, Fenerbahce, all these big teams. I think I missed the opportunity to kind of help these guys, you know what I mean? Instead of, I was thinking selfishly, why am I not playing? I could have made sure they would, being led the right way or set an example. I think I could have done a better job of that. So my experience in France wasn't long, but I learned so much from that moment. One about myself and one about the business. I wouldn't change a bit. I just wish I could have been a better leader, a better example. I could have handled the situation a little bit better. What I mean, but now I'm old. I'm retired. I can admit when I was wrong, but I wouldn't change a thing because I had to go through that to learn something about myself.
That's what I'm so excited about, because obviously now in your role, having coached and of course what you're doing on social media and with your speaking, you're obviously doing such a good job of leading people in that sense. So I'm curious, of course, to eventually to talk about maybe how that all happened. But one last question about maybe your playing career was obviously the basketball tournament, right? It's something that not a lot of people play in, and it's a super cool experience. And I can imagine it was definitely a lot of fun. If you could talk maybe about what made that so much different from every other place you'd played basketball before.
It was great because one, it brought DC guys, the DMV guys back on the same team, and rarely do we get to play with each other. We always compete against each other. This is what makes us who we are. We like to compete against each other. So it was great for us to be able to play on the same team with James Guest, Pops, Muscle Bunsu, David Hawkins, Mike Sweetney, but my old high school teammate, DeMar Johnson, lottery pick, James White, Chris Wright. So the list goes on. Guys that, are still out here doing their thing. I was fortunate enough to be on the same floor with. We just injuries and stuff like that. We were a number one seed 2 straight years and got beat by overseas elite. And I think our little rivalry, it definitely got some momentum built for the for what was to come for the TBT, because our games were feisty. We had some real blood out there on the on the floor. We were really battling to win that money, because we all needed it. And but at the end of the day, none but respect for what overseas elite has been able to accomplish in that tournament. I'm pretty sure it's going to be another powerhouse that's going to come out the woodwork again. And I was just glad to be a part of it, as it was coming out.
It's so cool because it's definitely grown so much popularity recently. It's awesome thinking about leagues like that and how they've been able to make basketball a little fun and change things up. But thinking about it, we've spoken so much about competitiveness and all these characteristics, right, that you've learned throughout your career. I'm curious, so when you made the transition to coaching, obviously you had to take on much more of a role of being a leader for your players and everything like that. And I've seen so much of what you post on Instagram with when you're motivating and all that stuff. Did you always know you were going to at some point go into coaching? Did it kind of happen once you retired, you made the decision? And how did you get those skills necessary in such a short time?
Coaching I knew I wanted to do something related to basketball. So when I was captain of Venice, I started working on what was I going to do after. Started planting seeds with the Wizards. I had always worked out with the Wizards in the summertime. So they knew who I was, and Tommy Shepard, who's now the GM, has always been within the Wizards family. So reached out to him, got introduced to him through my TBT coach, and built a relationship. Intern, paid my way out to Vegas just to be with the team. Didn't even stay with them, just to be with them. And then that carried on to me being officially on the staff the next summer. But I'm still building a relationship within the organization every time I go back overseas. Then that third year, I was still working out, practicing. I'm still practicing with the team, but coaching them at the same time. That's what made everything unique about me. I was able to still go out there and kick some ass whenever I needed. But most importantly, I was able to lead by example and show these guys instead of just using my words all the time. And that turned into me being offered to play in the summer league. I'm 35, 36 years old. I'm like, man, y'all 10 years late, ain't you? But I didn't play. I regret that. I should have played just to say I did it, but I was mainly focused on helping these kids. And I think it would have been selfish of me to, I knew I wasn't going to get picked up. I knew I wasn't going to get no NBA shot seriously. So Oh, who knows? But I just felt like these young guys really deserve an opportunity, and I didn't want to be in the middle of that. So I continued to coach that summer, and then went back overseas, retired, and then the Go-Go, Capital City Go-Go, Tommy Shepard reached. We had always talked, and I knew that I was going to retire as soon as I finished that last season in Pauk. I just didn't make it official yet, and I kept the door open of me playing. But I was really just waiting for the official offer from the Capital City Go-Go, the Wizards G League affiliate. And that whole experience was great. That was when I learned so much about in a short period of time, because I didn't go through the coaching clinics or anything like that. But basically getting in off my reputation that I built over in Europe, and my character, who I am as a person, and what I bring to the character on the court. So for me to be able to accomplish this was big for me. And like I said, the experience, having to learn so quickly and being thrown in the fire, not never doing the scout, and not never cutting up video, learning all these things. Of course, they gave me some time to figure it out, but that was the part I was really starting to enjoy, because I felt like I was making some progress. As soon as we get into a rhythm, COVID happened. We didn't end up having a team in the bubble. I'm looking forward to getting back on the bench coaching. I'm trying to create some other opportunities for myself outside of coaching, starting a company, mentoring kids coming from college, and some guys, that's trying to get overseas, and also helping some guys that's actually overseas, using some things that I learned from coaching with the Wizards, and try to help these guys that I know that I can help make an impact, help these guys, make some better sound decisions when it comes to contracts and choosing teams and stuff like that, and how to deal with certain moments in Europe. It's not always going to be, everybody looks at the top players over there and how they got successful, and they never look at how they got there. And that's just like the Mamba mentality. He says, don't look at what I did, look at how I did it. And that's something that, I try to put a lot of attention to details and the little things, and it's worked for me. And I think I would be doing myself a disservice of not, helping these young guys out here, not to make the same mistakes I did. And also coming out with the app soon. I've been talking about competition this whole time. That's been a common word that I've been using. And my app is a social network and sports app that's going to track the wins and losses of each individual. So whether when you play pickup with your guys, who's getting the most wins amongst your friends, and expect that to come out very soon. But it's just not going to be basketball. It's going to be every sport. So this is going to be something that's going to be huge, and expect some announcements coming from me very soon. And anybody that's looking to get any type of advice, you could hit me up on Phil Goss Jr. .com, PhilGossJR.com. Hit me up. Social media, Phil G32. I'm here for you guys, and I want to see you guys win.
Absolutely love that. It's amazing, the whole story about you coaching. You brought up Tommy Shepard, and he's been a past guest in the show, so it's crazy thinking about just like kind of the network and how everyone in the basketball industry kind of knows each other, and everyone's helping each other out. And obviously, awesome thing about your coaching journey. But then also, I'm really interested in what you were just saying about the company you're building, the app, all that stuff. Obviously, there's so much advice that you learned, and we've spoken about throughout the whole show. What's maybe the biggest piece that you would have gone back and told yourself, maybe when you first start playing overseas? What's the biggest piece of advice now that you've not only just completed your career, but you've also gone to this coaching world, you've learned all these things? Like, obviously you're going to give it to these kids, but what would you have gone back and told, let's say, a 22-year-old Phil Goss when he first started his basketball journey?
I mean, be comfortable being uncomfortable. I think I've learned my worst moments have been my best moments, so to speak, for me. Every time, I had to endure some type of adversity or anything, I've always followed it up some success. That's even on the micro level, if I have a bad shooting slump, that next game when I catch on fire is a 30-point game. So it's like the same thing, staying even killed on the court is the same thing I try to do in life, try to stay even killed, with real clear goals in mind. And that keeps me focused and keeps me locked in on whatever agenda I'm trying to accomplish. You can't get anywhere or reach a type of success without any adversity. And I think the people who are not afraid of adversity or don't run from it are the guys that, kind of solidify themselves as professionals or people that stay in the game for a long period of time. And the last thing I would leave is don't make somebody else's success story your version of success. And that's one thing that I had to learn the hard way. My whole career chasing after something that wasn't meant for me. I was chasing after other people's success stories and never really accepted, where I was or felt that I should be somewhere better or I should be making more money. I didn't really value where I was until I was 36 years old. And I just say, man, you understand what I'm saying?
Definitely.
Don't make somebody else's success. That's not yours. Create your own version of success. We don't know what success is. You know what I mean? We don't know what it is, but we're going to work hard every single day. We're going to make sure we apply each hour, month, day, whatever, year to accomplishing these goals. And we're going to look up and then we're just going to be there. That's what it is. It's like, I put so much pressure on trying to keep up with somebody else or keep up with my peers. So I would say value what you have, value where you at the moment, be in the moment. And that's what I would leave it.
Fantastic advice. Definitely a lot for listeners to take home. And there's so many things from this episode that I'm sure they can take through your career. And obviously what you've learned from it, path you took obviously was a really interesting one in terms of the stops you made, both playing, coaching. I mean, there's so many different ways to take this. And I really hope our listeners take the time. Hopefully by the time this episode drops, we're getting closer to the launch of the website, the app, all that good stuff. So our listeners can take a crack at it. So Coach Phil, thank you so much for coming on the show. I mean, this was a really fun one. Definitely an awesome career to kind of go through. And we'll definitely keep in touch. Thanks so much for coming on.
All right, man. And good luck, man. Keep doing your thing.
Thanks for listening to Gen Z Hoops. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe on Instagram, LinkedIn, and all major social media platforms at Gen Z Hoops. You can tune in and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and every other podcast platform on the planet. Get ready for the next episode.